Welcome back to the shop, everyone. This week's video takes place in 2025, week 46. That is going to be November 10th through 16th. And we are going to start out by cutting some new engine mount tabs. Now, having some issues with the plasma cutter. I think there's some interference issues I got to work out. I got to do a bit more grounding, stuff like that. But the main reason why we are cutting these out is the ones that I have right now are a little small, and the engine, I had to adjust the positioning of it. So what happened is one of the bolts was like right at the very top and didn't actually hold anything all that well. So what I'm going to do is put some new tabs on the front end. They're a little bit bigger. These are also a little bit thicker. I don't think I really needed thicker ones, but I figured what the hell, I'm putting in a lot more horsepower, so a little bit thicker, probably not going to hurt anything. So anyways, I'm just going to struggle with cutting these out. The plasma cutter didn't do a great job, and that's because I eventually realized I did not have the height set all that well. It was too low. So what happens is when it's too low, a lot of the plasma and the slag blows back up into the nozzle and creates a whole lot of issues. So yeah, I do get the second one kind of cut out, but eventually I have to go over to the bench and use like a grinder and, you know, just get it all cut out of there myself. It didn't really cut through the whole way, and, you know, might have been a little bit too fast cutting. In any case, it's not the end of the world, but yeah, it didn't. It in the end, it turned out all right, but it wasn't perfect. Right, so what I'm going to start doing now is cutting out the mid-plate tabs. So I had the mid-plate on the car or on the back of the transmission, but I never actually had any tabs for it to mount to. I wasn't running that much power, so I wasn't too stressed about it. But now after this winter, I should have, if I ever get the parts to build the engine, I should have a fair amount more power. So I do just want to have the mid-plate there, just, as good security, as a good measure. So I'm just going to cut them out, and then we will get to installing them. Now that we got the mid-plate tabs all cleaned up, we are going to start getting these installed. So on the frame, I made some blue marks before I took the engine out, because I need to put some tabs on here to mount these plates to. So my assumption is that I made the mark on the front of the plate, and then the plate's about 1/4 inch thick. So I'm moving the tab that I'm installing 1/4 inch back from the mark that I made. So that should put it in theory on the back side of the plate. And now that I'm thinking back through this, I was just making sure that is what I did. And I'm pretty confident that's what I did. If I installed it right on the blue line, and I messed up, because that's going to be right where the mid plate goes. So we're going to assume that I did it right, and I, spaced it 1/4 inch back from the blue line. And so I just got to clean up the area, making sure not to remove the blue line so that I can get the tab spaced correctly. I want to get them the same height on both sides. So it's fairly long tab, because I don't know exactly where the mid plate's going to land, so I want to give myself some room. But I do want to make sure that it's the same height off of the frame rail on both sides, so that it's even. And then we'll get those tacked on, and then we'll get them burned in. So I figured I should actually grab the mid plates, make sure that everything's kind of lined up correctly. It sits flat against the tabs, clamp it on, just kind of check things over, make sure that I should be able to get some bolts through there. I think this was just, a fairly smart idea, especially coming from me. I don't usually have a lot of those. But it seems like everything is going to work out just fine, I think. Making sure I got the angle correct. I want everything down 3 degrees. So yeah, testing, I think this is as good as I can get. Nothing much left to do here. All right, so after getting those 2 tabs burned in, I figured while I'm here, I should continue working on the clutch hole. I got a few welds on there already, but since, I got the welder out, I might as well go and weld the rest of it around so it's nice and solid and not going anywhere. And then after that, I will get my carbide burr out and I will clean it up. I'll use a drum sander on my drill just to get back to final shape, and then I'll do some test fitting to make sure that it works. Yeah, so just throwing another bolt in there just to make sure that the 2 pieces are squeezed together nice and tight before I weld this together permanent. As I mentioned, now that that's all welded together, I'm going to take my carbide bit and just grind some of that weld down and make sure it's the right size. And then after that, I will bring my the piece that mounts to the firewall back, and I'll start drilling out the holes that actually go through. I'll just do the 2 holes that are closest to lined up, and then what I'll do is I'll actually mount the block to the back piece, kind of get it bolted together a little bit, and then drill the rest of the holes. So as you can see, I have the block that goes on the firewall there, and I'm just testing with it as I go along, just to make sure that the hole is the right size, not too loose, not well, too small isn't going to work, so make sure it's not too loose. So yeah, with just a regular 1/4 inch bolt holding that together, I can start drilling out some of the other holes just right through the block. Just that kind of gives me a bit of a guide. Even though I think I probably nicked a bit of the aluminum, it's not the end of the world. So we're just test fitting things here with the actual bolts that it's going to use. I want to make sure those bolts are going to be long enough. You know, I did double the thickness of the firewall in that area, so, you know, just at this stage, you know, there's no paint on the car. This is the optimal time to test this and make sure it's all going to fit, because, you know, a little bit of fixes later on, not the end of the world, but if, you know, I need a major change, that's going to be a real pain in the ass. So I figured I should get the brake booster back on and then actually put the rest of the clutch master in place, make sure it all fits, make sure it all clears, because before, the clutch master was pretty much touching the brake booster and just did not have any clearance. But now I got tons of clearance. I'm laughing. Like all the work that I did on this firewall when I 3D scanned it and I moved the hole over, I think it was like a ½ inch, and I moved it around just a tiny little bit. It worked out. So taking that little bit of extra time just to do those small things, it really worked out. I can pull the brake booster out while it's still installed. I can't be any happier with how this went. I do need to tap that top hole because it's the top stud's not threading in, so just making myself a little note. But this is done. The clutch master, its position, that's all good to go. I don't have to worry about that until I reassemble the car. That's awesome. All right, so now I'm going to get into a little bit of cardboard aided design. I got a hole at the bottom of the shock tower and a hole at the top of the shock tower that I want to fill up. So as you've seen me do before, I'm going to take some cardboard. I'm going to use a Sharpie to get the rough shape. I will transfer that rough shape to sheet metal, and then I will cut it out and grind it down and get it, much better shape. Could I have 3D scanned this? Yes. Did I want to? No. I thought this would be way quicker than 3D scanning, going to the computer, processing the scan, getting the scan into CAD, and then getting a sketch, and then plasma cutting. For something like this, I felt that it was just going to be quicker and easier just to do it by hand in the old school way. And in the end, I think it works out all right. Now that the bottom's done, we just repeat the same process on the top. It was at this point I got real lazy. I really didn't feel like tigging in the corner. It just wasn't a great angle. I didn't have good access to it, so I said screw it, and I grabbed the MIG welder. It's in an area that you're really never gonna see, so I wasn't too worried about it. There was also a big gap, and I think that was the main thing, is there was a big gap I needed to fill, and I knew if I tried to TIG it, it just wasn't gonna work. MIG filling that gap's a little bit easier, so I was like, fuck it, whatever. It's in an area that's not gonna be seen. It'll be good enough. Right, so now we're going to move on to reinstalling the mounts for the heater box. So I'm cutting them off of the old chunk of firewall that I used to have. And it's kind of funny, even with just like 4 or 5 tacks, they were on there pretty good. Like, it took a bunch of cutting to really get them off. So I mean, that's good, and it means I know that it was solidly mounted to the car, but it's, you know, also just a bit of a pain in the ass. But yeah, I might as well just reuse the exact same mounts. They worked. I had no issues with them. So just cut them off, clean them up a little bit, and then we will get them reinstalled on the car. Now, the way I'm going to get them reinstalled on the car is a little interesting. So what I've done is there was the bottom stud that was still there from the original installation. I just need to move the top 2. So how do you get a piece of metal stuck to the firewall but still be able to move it around? Because, you know, I didn't know exactly where it needed to go, but I needed it stuck to the firewall so that I could get it in place, but then I needed to move it around. Well, I used a big magnet on the engine bay side. So I put the big electromagnet on the big side, and then the mount just sticks to the firewall, and then you can move it around a little bit. It's not a big deal. You can tack it on as soon as you get it tacked, remove the magnet, and it's good to go. So I'm going to do the exact same thing with the second one to reinstall, but the third one total here. And just like that, I have 3 perfectly placed mounts, so I can go ahead and just tack that in, remove the magnet, and then you know, double check fitment, and then put the 7 more tacks on there. Alright, so up next we are going to cut the hole in the firewall for the heater bulkhead. So the heater bulkhead has 4 connections coming through, 2 for the heater, 2 for the AC. So I need to make sure I get this in a place where I have enough room to run some AC lines in the car. So what I want to do is reinstall the heater box on the back plate, get the heater box roughly in place, and then make sure that I have enough room that I can run some AC lines and all the fittings are going to clear and all that sort of thing. yeah, so with the heater box in there, I can start figuring out where I'm going to put this bulkhead. Now that I've redone the firewall, I can try and get this, you know, as tight up as I can, as close to, you know, the top cowl. You know, there are some things that I can do to hopefully be able to have AC in the car next summer, because I really want AC in the car. It's going to get hot in the summers, you know, 32 plus degrees Celsius, not freedom units, which is pretty hot, especially when you're sitting in a car in the sun, in the staging lanes, in your race gear. It kind of sucks. It would be nice to have some AC. So what I noticed is with the heater box in its original placements, I can't really fit the bulkhead and the fittings. It's just really tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the heater box towards the driver's side by about, I think I went 1.5 inches. And that's all I could really move on this plate. If I wanted to go any more, I would actually have to move the whole plate, which, you know, not a big deal. I could do that in the same way that I am, you know, moving the holes for the heater box. I could also just move the mounting holes themselves, and then everything would kind of shift over. But I just want to try just move the heater box. It's 4 holes, fairly simple. Let's just try this, and if I need to move more, you know, I can. Sometimes you just need to move stuff over just a tiny little bit, and I think that will suffice for what I need. Now, obviously this bulkhead is, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but This bulkhead is going to sit more toward or in the engine. I can't, because there's metal in the way, I can't actually put it in the firewall where it's properly going to sit. So looking at this, I'm like, okay, these fittings are going to sit another, probably 3/4 of an inch forward. So I think this should be good, and I should be able to make everything work in here. So now that I know where I want this bulkhead, it is time to get this cut in. So my original thought was, I was like, I'll mark it on the interior side, and then I'll see if I can get in there and cut it out. The reason why I kind of want to do that is, well, I know where the heater box was, I know where I want it cut out. But then I realized, no, it's just going to be way too tight in there. There's no real good reason to try and do this from the inside. I got all the access from the engine bay, more access than I could ever dream of. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Right now I'm just kind of like getting in here and I'm just marking out where I want the bulkhead to go. And just on that marking out, like, it sucked. I had to go around the dash bar, and I just kind of realized, it doesn't make sense to try and do it from this side. So what I end up doing is I just drill a hole in like the bottom left corner, which would be the bottom right on the engine bay side. And then I just retransfer where I need to cut out onto the engine bay side. So yeah, that right there is just purely to give me a reference. I grab a file, clean up the hole on the other side because it's really sharp, and then I'll put the bulkhead connector against it, remark it out, and from there I'll drill a couple of holes. I'll take my air saw. I will cut out the majority of it with an air saw pretty liberally, but staying inside the lines a lot. And then after that, I come back with a carbide burr and just sneak up on it. I'm testing a lot. The first time I did this, I was very lazy and very, I wouldn't say, well, maybe not lazy, but very careless and just very, just didn't care, didn't take my time. I was it's not necessarily lazy, but I was very, okay, maybe lazy is the word. I don't know. I wasn't very good in any case. So this time I'm like, no, I'm going to take my time, sneak up on it, really make it fit nice. And man, it does fit nice. I'm so happy with how it turned out. So hopefully you can see this time around, like, it's a lot more fitting, it's a lot more marking, it's a lot more just taking my time and making this way better than it was the first time around. Through the magic of the camera probably dying, you're about to see a magic trick. 3, 2, 1. Bam! Heater box was already back installed. So I put the heater box back in. I put the AC fittings on the AC lines just to test fit and make sure that they're going to clear and they kind of have a good angle, and they do. And also the heater hoses should still go on, so I got really no concerns there. Really happy with how that came out. Now, as I was doing some of this work, I noticed I have a bunch more pinholes in the firewall. And, you know, there's some areas where there was just big wavy and kind of gaps. So I'm just going to take the time now. I'm going to fill some of the holes and some of the gaps in the firewall. Some of the metal is just so freaking thin. But it is what it is. Yeah, so you're going to go and fill more holes. And you know the drill. Fill, grind, fill, grind, fill, grind. Well, folks, I think that with a lot of Bondo, this car or firewall might actually turn out looking rather fine. But that is all the time that we have for this week. So as always, if you stuck around this long, I'd like to thank you for viewing, and we'll see you in the next one.